Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about unique avenues of revenue, part three, and the final part on this. I've known we've done a couple of parts on these in the past, but this should be the last one in this particular series here. So, we all go out and sell every day, we market every day. We go out, we look for different stuff, but when we can sell more products to the same people, sometimes it's a lot more advantageous than it is to just sell one particular product when you've got your market share already. So, one of the markets that a lot of restorers don't get into is asbestos. A lot of people are scared of asbestos. They think it's difficult to do. They think it's hard to get licensed. And all of those, or most of those, could be true. But let's face it, if we wanted to do something easy, we'd work at McDonald's and flip hamburgers every day. And the best way to figure out a way to make money is to do something that other people don't want to do, that other people can't do, or that they're not willing to take the training to go do it. Asbestos is really not that difficult. If you can do mold, you can do asbestos. In fact, I would venture to say that asbestos is a little bit easier than mold. Asbestos is a lot heavier than mold, a lot heavier than mold, so it settles to the horizontal surfaces very quickly, which makes it easy to help a vacuum up. You can see asbestos dust for the most part, so it's easy to see what you're vacuuming, and you use the same equipment that you've already got. PPE is absolutely no different than what you're already using. Containment is absolutely no different than what you're already using, and air scrubbers are no different than what you're already using. Your disposal is different. You have to use disposal difference, but that is as simple as having a shipping container with a lock on it and signs on the door indicating what it is. And then you have to carry that to a hazardous material landfill, which is more expensive, but after all, you're putting it on the bill. So asbestos is a mineral fiber that is naturally occurring, and that's the reason that we still see asbestos in products today. Companies take products that are naturally made out of natural products in our environment, and they make new products out of it, and sometimes it contains asbestos. It's a fiber. It has very high strength to it. It has a lot of fire-resistant qualities to it, and has a lot of good qualities. It only has one bad one. So it's an irritant in the lungs once it gets in there, and because it is a fiber, it scars the lung tissues as you're breathing in and out. It is so small once you get it in that it can't get out of the lungs, and it winds up scarring the alveoli in the lungs and causes what they call asbestosis. The scarring can also cause cancer called mesothelioma. So just like mold can cause people to have different irritants, so can asbestos. But again, if you wear your proper PPE, you wear the proper air scrubbers, your proper air exchanges, your proper containment, you're not going to breathe any of it, so I don't think you have to worry about it. Here's a slide talking about what all health hazards you can do, that it can cause cancer, it can cause mesothelioma, swollen abdomen, chest, just anything that'll kill you it can cause. Now, it's not like you go in and breathe this one day and you have this the next, so it has a little bit of a delay to it. You see it in people that work in the industry and may stay in the industry a lot. A lot of homes contain asbestos. A lot of commercial buildings contain asbestos. It's new asbestos being put in homes every day. There's a myth out there that says that asbestos can't be in a house that was built before 1980. You pick a number. It depends on who you're talking to, and that's very, very false. They're putting asbestos in houses every day. That's why it's important for you to test for asbestos. You're already dealing with it, you're just not making money off of it. A lot of asbestos in glue that glues floors down and stuff like that. So that's another reason that never gets airborne, but when you take it out and dispose of it, it's a little easier, again, than mold is. Potential sources of asbestos can be pretty much any surface. A lot of shingles, the cement that holds the shingles down is very, very high likelihood it's going to have asbestos. They can still make that product today because it is not friable, it's not airborne, it's in the mastic, it's in the glue. So they can still put it in there today. And it's not a problem until you get ready to disturb it or tear it up or cut it or grind it. Window putties, same way. They can still make it today because it's sticky and gluey. Popcorn ceilings is on the list. Really high content of popcorn ceilings, particularly in older ceilings. And I think popcorn ceilings are out of date, but how many water damages do you go to that you have popcorn ceilings on the ceiling and you have to scrape it off, or it's just simply falling off and getting on the floor, and then you start blowing air across it. Sheetrock, mud, and tape. More the mud than the tape can have asbestos in it, even though it's a new product. Wood stoves, you remember I said it was a fire retardant and a great insulator. So wood stoves are notorious for having asbestos in it. Shingle, what they call siding shingles, the older style, brittle, clay-looking shingle on the side of the house, most of those would have asbestos in them. Dishwashers, ranges, furnitures, heat and air. Pipe insulation used to all be made out of asbestos a long time ago because it does have such a good insulating quality and stuff. So same way with any type of insulation. So what makes remediation unique avenue? Because a lot of people don't want to do it. A lot of people are nervous about it. Lack of companies performing it. It's a potential large loss market because a lot of the buildings, and it says before 1986, and it is a lot more of it out there before 86 when the regulations started taking place. That don't mean the ones built after 86 don't have it in there, but they all contain asbestos. It can be done with the current efforts you're already doing. Like I said, if you're doing mold, you can do asbestos. If you're doing residential or commercial water damage, you can do asbestos. You're wearing the same PPE, the same containment, the same scrubbers that you always have. Little difference in residential and commercial. Someone in a residence may think, well, it's not going to bother me. I've been living here 40 years. As long as we cover it with paint or something, I'm not worried about it. People in commercial buildings can't afford that flexibility because they've got several people, both in the public and their employees, coming in and out all the time. So it makes asbestos a really high liability for these employers. The government's recommendations and the way the government got all over it is you just cannot afford to have any undisturbed materials. Any materials that are disturbed, you can have undisturbed asbestos, such as pipe insulation. The way you abate that is normally to completely wrap it with a new material and just encapsulate it and leave it there. But sometimes you can't afford that luxury when you've had a water damage or fire damage and it's already falling into the floor. Schools and all commercial buildings pretty much have to have a survey on file. They call it an asbestos letter on file, saying that they have had their buildings surveyed, and here's where there is asbestos and here's where it is not. So it's a good market to go out and market for. A lot of the people that used to do it when the money was a lot higher in it have quit doing it because the money is not hardly as good now. But it's better than money for mold or water damage, either one. And even with new OSHA regulations coming out about silica dust added to that, it's makes a very, very, very good avenue for revenue. When you're marketing for water damages, you market to people and so, let them know. So you need a company who can do your water and your asbestos both, because most of the time when you're doing water damage, you're going to run into some asbestos. So, again, minimal health risk if you're doing your PPE correctly, if you're doing your containment correctly. You're simply not going to have a problem. It's a product that don't burn you when it gets on your skin. It don't do anything like that. It's only an irritant when you breathe it. You obviously don't want it on your skin because you're going to move it around and it'll eventually get to your lungs. As long as you're doing your containment just like you should be doing in mold. We see a lot of people not doing it correctly, but as long as you should be doing it like you do in mold, then it should be a minimal risk and minimal health hazard to the people that are working in it. There are people who die from asbestosis every year. There are, typically people, again, who have worked in asbestos for a long period of time before they knew it was dangerous. Most of your ships in the shipping industry of any kind, Navy, military, cargo, anything, just had tons of asbestos in it. And they always had people working on it. When they had to work on a water line that was leaking, they just tear the asbestos out and put new in. So you'd see a lot of asbestos wrapping, and those are the kind of people that are normally having problems with asbestosis or mesothelioma. Regulations that are required to do it is EPA and OSHA regulations, and state and federal. I don't know of any state that don't require a state license to do asbestos. Unfortunately, for the ones of you that travel, I'm not aware of states that commingle or reciprocal agreements or anything like that to do asbestos. Each state requires different rules and regulations for working on asbestos. Again, your protection we've talked about already, but safety equipment is all the same. Eye, ears, nose, respiratory, gloves, boots, booties. You do all the same things that you do in mold. So go to your mold class. You're pretty much going to an asbestos class at the same time, barring the regulations that you got to go to learn. So you've already had the training. You've already have the expertise. You already know how to do it. It's just a simple way of having additional revenue to go out and make some extra money. Start with the ICRC for your training. Get your continuing education credits also. Asbestos abatement workers class and supervisors classes are available also. I highly recommend, if you're not already AMRT certified for mold, that you go to the mold class first. But you can't do mold like pretty much everybody in the industry I see doing it. They don't wear their PPE properly. They're not doing the work properly when they're wearing their PPE. So you need to go through the classes and learn how to do that, and the more proper you do it, the more revenue that you can make out of it. So it makes it pretty easy. Insurance, it's not going to be covered in your normal insurance policy. You're going to have a different insurance policy to cover for that. So don't run out and get your license and start doing asbestos jobs until you get the proper insurance. All right, let's talk about meth labs a little bit. Once again, when you're doing meth labs, the first thing you need when you're doing meth labs is PPE. We've already talked about. So what is a meth lab? Methamphetamine is a central nervous stimulant. You all know people have meth labs everywhere. They're showing behind you a mobile meth lab, but now people are cooking meth in the front seat of their car or in the trunk of their car. They're cooking it in a lot of rental properties, a lot of hotels. Unusual to see one mobile this big. They've scaled this down a little bit so they can manufacture it pretty much anywhere. People make it a lot in their homes. Again, most of the time rented homes in hotels. It has a pungent odor to it, while they're making it and the chemicals that they're using to make it with. Meth lab instances across the United States. You can obviously see which ones are the highest. No reflection on my state of Tennessee, but it's up there in one of the high ranks to it. So it's a good business to be in, to be able to clean up these meth labs. Once the police come in and bust a meth lab and they have the hazardous material guys come in, which could be you, come in and do the initial cleanup, then the entire house still has to be cleaned, and you have to follow the methods and the procedures set forth in the standards to clean up meth. You can't just go in there and wipe it down and repaint the house and go on down the road and deem it safe for the general public to come back in, or maybe somebody else to work on. Meth, as you already probably know from watching the news and everything, it creates strokes, sometimes brain misfunctions, long-term effects of meth. A lot of tooth decay. You can pretty much spot somebody across the street. It causes irregular heartbeats when you take it, most of the time tachycardia, which is a rapid heartbeat, which can be followed by cardiovascular collapse and subsequent death. So, and that's pretty much for people taking the meth. If you're working in the meth and if you're wearing your proper PPE, you'll never know the meth is there. If you're not wearing your proper PPE and you get in there, it can be dangerous. I mean, if you're driving your car without your seatbelt, it can be dangerous. So, it's you think of it being dangerous because people who are ignorant on the subjects or don't have the training in the subject think that it's really big and bad and the worst thing on earth that you can deal with, and I'm not going to touch it. And that's why there's not a lot of people in the industry that is doing this, but it's really no more dangerous than a lot of things you do in life, as long as you wear the proper equipment and follow the procedures and do it like you should do it. What are the dangers? The users of it use toxic materials, battery acids and other materials, dump it into the rivers and the grounds, and a lot of it is highly flammable and explosive. When you first go in, you've got to make sure that those explosive areas are already taken care of. It's normally done by the fire department or an emergency response team, which again you may be if you get that proper training. But once they get through with their job, the chemical residue still remains, and that's what you want to be there to clean up if you don't take the training to be an emergency first responder. Again, most of the time that's handled through the governments, but sometimes not. Sometimes they subcontract that out. They don't want these chemicals to be dumped in the ground or sewers or septic tanks because they don't want the battery acids and stuff like that they're using during the creation of it to get into the water system. So, again, being a first responder to it has a lot of advantages, but that does require extra special training, fire training, and things such as that. So that does get outside what you're already trained for. It uses a little different equipment that you use and stuff like that. But it's a rare instance that cities subcontract that out. But if you find that rare instance, it's still not a bad or unique way of making extra money when you can do it. It does take extra training if you're the first responder. How to recognize a meth lab, like I mentioned earlier, a pungent, strong odor, cat urine, ether ammonia, other chemicals that you'll smell. It just be a pungent, strong odor. Make your eyes water if you walk in there without your mask and stuff on. Coffee filters containing white pasty substances or dark paste, shiny crystals. They use a lot of coffee filters when they filter their meth and get that. Shacks or cabins with the windows blacked out, be away. Excessive trash, antifreeze containers, lithium batteries, a lot of different things. So that's what the police are looking for when they are looking for a meth lab. Obviously, if you're called to clean up a meth lab, somebody's already found all that, but that's some of the things that you'll see as you are getting into the business and going down through there. So now this guy on the right lower corner here, he don't have a meth lab, never ever, so leave me alone. So evidently he's blacked out all the way, and they keep thinking he has a meth lab in there when he don't. So, or maybe he does, and he just wanted to write that down. What makes it a unique way of revenue? Tens of thousands of houses have meth labs in them, and they all have to be cleaned up, and they all have to be have some level of demolition in them. Getting rid of the meth lab is dangerous and expensive, so there's a lack of companies that perform that cleanup service because it's dangerous and expensive. So you'll see people here that are properly have the proper attire on. For the most part, they're cleaning everything up extremely well. They've got their barrels to put their contaminated stuff in. I don't know, I don't want to try to lug out a piece of carpet that size, but other than that, it looks pretty good, but you've got to have your correct equipment on to be able to do that. Regulations and requirements, state certificates, federal regulations, your OSHA requirements, hazmat certifications, local health departments can be a big help for you getting these. Local police departments, fire departments can also be a big help in getting these cleaned up. Now your state and federal and OSHA regulations, you already have to do anyway to do mold and to do residential water damages and stuff when you're wearing PPE at any rate. There's different types of state regulations. You may not have your hazmat certifications, but if you can learn mold and go to that 5-day class and learn how to put up containment, learn how to put your PPE on and wear it correctly, you can certainly learn how to do the state and federal regulations that you need to do to be able to do meth. Several different training and education facilities, meth lab cleanup, National Institute of Decontamination Specialists. They offer training at your facility or theirs. I'm not endorsing them. It's just one of the bigger ones out there that do it. The ICRC has meth lab decontamination that they sponsor and put together for you. It's an organization that you're already used to dealing with and can get the training. And you may want to go take the training and then determine if you want to do this type of business or not once you've had all the training. You may take the training and decide, I don't want to do it. But your credentials and your general knowledge of our entire industry of being a mitigation service will benefit immensely by taking that training, because you'll know what you're doing. You'll know how to recognize it, and you'll know how to get it done if you want to, or to run from it if you don't want to. But I'm telling you, if you can do PPE and containment and air scrubbers and all that kind of stuff, that this training won't be any more difficult for you than the training that you've already had. Who pays for the cleanup? If you have some insurance policies cover it, some don't. I think that's going to depend a lot on the circumstances. If you have a rental policy and you have renters in there that are cooking meth, they probably will. But you want to figure that out before you go do the cleanup and make sure that it is covered and that you know who's going to pay for that. But a landlord can't re-rent property until he's got it certified that that place is clean. And even if he lived in a little podunk town like mine that they don't certify that, you wouldn't want to do it for the liability of it. You want to make sure you've got a certification just for the general liability practices of it. Marketing the service, you've already got marketing people out there. You're already seeing insurance agents. You're already seeing fire departments, I hope. The health department's a no-brainer. You just use the same marketing people you got, send them to the same training you take, and get them out there and get them talking about it. Make it aware that you can perform that service. Join organizations that the police and fire are in, where it's permissible. In a lot of places they are. To join those organizations, go to their dinners, throw them a fish fry or barbecue for the police and fire service at your place. A lot of different ways to market for this. Policemen and firemen are just like restaurators. They all like free food. So that's pretty much the easy way to do it. Information on meth lab cleanup in the state of Indiana. I'm not going to read all this to you, but this gives you a lot of information. If you will, take your phone out and do a snapshot of that. Those two slides there on the right, and that'll give you a lot of information. And once you get it down for one place, you can get it down for another. One other unique avenue for making money that we have not talked about, and I don't have a slide on it, but I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about it because it's easy and it's simple, and there's about a 99.9% chance you're already doing it wrong, and so you already have a liability for it. But about 3 years ago, the OSHA passed a federal standard about silica dust and what you have to do to protect your employees if you have them working in silica dust. Now, for the reference of what we normally do, silica dust is sheetrock. That's where we mainly deal in it. And if you read the OSHA standards on sheetrock and the amount of precautions you have to take to deal with the silica dust that's in sheetrock, it's identical to the precautions you take for mold. It's identical for the precautions you take for asbestos. It's identical for the precautions you're taking for meth lab cleanup. Do you see how all this runs together? I mean, it really does. You get trained on one of them and you learn how to do it well, and the other 3 or 4 are just free money in the bank. But silica dust, nobody's doing it right. You got guys in there with claw hammers and saws cutting out sheetrock with no respiratory protection on, and that is the last thing that OSHA recommends is a respiratory protection. They recommend saws with HEPA vacuums on it, commonly referred to in the industry as a kit saw. They recommend dust control. of 12 air exchanges per hour. Now you do your math, see how many air scrubbers you're putting in a building with 12 air exchanges an hour, and see if that's not a unique way of making extra revenue, because that adds up pretty quickly when you start doing that. Then there's another standard of OSHA that goes all beyond that. If you've got somebody working in a containment environment or in PPE, and the temperatures, and they have standards listed in there, the temperatures reach a certain degree. I think it's, and I'm gonna quote some numbers that may be wrong, but I'll be glad to send you the standard. But it's something as simple as like 75 degrees, then they have to have a 15-minute break every hour. If it reaches 78 degrees, they have to have a 30-minute break every hour. And then it gets on up to a 45-minute break every hour of these temperatures. Well, number one, your people can't work good in those conditions. Number two, if they're constantly having to come outside to take a break, their contamination level is going to be very, very high to be able to doff and don their PPE and to have to put it back on. So the simple answer to that is air conditioning. Use more air conditioning on your projects. Your people will be more comfortable. Your job site will be more comfortable, and it'll be more profitable because you're charging for air conditioning on it. So again, don't have a slide on the silica dust. That could be a whole nother program within itself, and may very well be coming up in the next few weeks. But think about that when you think about additional ways of making revenue. Thank you again. I am Scott Tarpley with the Crest Network, and have enjoyed today. Hope you do. If you have any questions, my number's at the bottom of the screen. Thank you.